Hi everybody, I'm joined today by Kam Patel from ServiceNow. Kam, thank you so much for coming along and talking to us today. Kam, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at ServiceNow?
Thanks, Lloyd. Yes, I'm Kam Patel. I have the pleasure of looking after the UK public sector business here at ServiceNow.
Fantastic, thank you. And just to give you guys a shout out, ServiceNow were covered in our Tech 200 list as one of the fastest growing companies in the public sector. So kudos on that, Kam, as well. But it also wasn't just ServiceNow, it's your kind of ecosystem of partners. So do you want to talk a little bit more about how you work with those and how those kind of relationships work to provide the sort of services that public sector need?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, the ecosystem, as you said, is critical to our success. We can't grow our business or deliver the type of success to our customers without our partners. So that will continue to be a focus. And the most successful solutions we've delivered have always been where there's transparency between the end customer, the partner, and ourselves in a very simplistic view of delivering success to our customers. That's got to be at the primary element of what we're doing. So yeah, really important that we have a strong ecosystem, and thank you to all those partners who support us in public sector.
Fantastic. And Kam, I should have said at the beginning, today's topic, we're really going to be talking about overcoming buyer fear and inertia in public sector tech sales. I can talk from some experience in procurement myself and going through that journey, especially when you're procuring these large scale projects. There is, there's some fear there. There can be some inertia in terms of being more comfortable with the incumbent. So really looking to explore that topic today around how we can make kind of buyers comfortable in those larger deals. So just to kind of kick us off, can I ask you, why do you think public sector organisations fear transitioning away from their legacy systems, and what do you think can cause inertia sometimes?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's not just public sector, but most organizations, whether it's public sector or commercial enterprise, there's an element of change fear, which we all have. Looking specifically at public sector, some of the big IT projects were long-term, 5-year plus, 10-year plus type solutions, whereas now the rate of change you're looking at reducing those down to months, if not days or weeks. So that typically creates an added level of pressure on the departments, on the procurement team, on the person who's in charge of that deliverable, because it's not insignificant from a cost perspective, but also the amount of change that needs to go in within an organization around people and processes is just as big. I think I've mentioned this before around consumerisation driving the pace of change. So, if you look at most of the way we consume IT, smartphones have accelerated the use of apps. How we consume a lot of services has changed through that rapid deployment of an app, and I think you'll agree that most end customers, if an app is not delivering the type of service it needs to, you'll stop using it and move on to something else. So within an enterprise organization or within a public sector organization, there's pressures from their customers, i.e. the citizens, on delivering those types of services, and equally there's pressures from their workforce to able to consume services and platforms that have a very simple to use piece. So the pressures for organizations is, how do you deliver this at a continual pace, which is something we've not faced before.
That's really interesting. It's interesting, this point about a kind of consumerist mindset. Is that something you're seeing more and more, sort of in the kind of, I suppose, in a classic B2B, or in this case B2G kind of sales process? Do you see the public sector itself acting more like a consumer rather than a kind of classic business buyer in the way that they think about technology there?
Yeah, I think it's moving towards that, in my opinion. If you look at, I always have a very simplistic view of the world. So you've got your employees, and then you've got your customers, and everyone has a customer, right? Whether you're public sector or not. So from an employee perspective, you've got generations where you've got people who've been in your business for a number of years, and then you've got the next generation of employees you're trying to attract and continue to grow and evolve. So if the solutions that you're providing, if the platform that you're delivering doesn't give that ability to learn and adapt quickly and easily, then you're going to lose a lot of productivity. And from a customer perspective, or from a citizen perspective, whether it's booking an appointment or understanding your how to pay your council tax, or how you pay your road tax or buy the road tax, all of these things have to be simple and easy for the consumer to embrace. And we've seen a great leap on that, from the days, I'm showing my age here, where you'd queue up with pieces of paper to buy your road tax at the post office, to where it's now completely online. So the productivity gain for both in that scenario, the DVLA, but also for as an end user / citizen, is huge, right? And that productivity gain just benefits the UK.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. And yeah, that example you give of kind of buying car tax and things like that, those, I mean, I'm old enough to kind of know how far that's progressed. And I guess as well as kind of consumers as citizens, our expectations around apps and kind of how quickly things can, we can navigate things, our kind of tolerance for things that don't work quickly is reduced, right? So really interesting to kind of think about that on a kind of more, a larger scale across the whole of the public sector.
And you mentioned about the apprehension about change. The public sector always has the fact that they are spending taxpayers' money. So the pressure there then is equally amplified to make sure that decisions they make aren't costly and will deliver the type of service that it's intended to do. And I think this is where the responsibilities of the vendors and the partners is equally as important as the decision maker itself, because if you're clear on from the start as to what the solution will provide, how it will provide that, and how you go about to deliver that, the chances are everyone is aware, and hopefully you minimize the risk of the project not delivering what it intended to do.
Got it. I think that's really, really, really good advice, really good insight. Okay, Kam, just to kind of change it up for a second, in terms of from a private sector perspective versus public sector, do you think in terms of kind of the potential kind of fears or the process that buyers are going through, how do you see that being different in the private sector versus public sector, either in your own experience or when you talk about those things internally, and what needs to be different in your approach?
I think there's every person I've deal with from a vendor or partner perspective that deals with public sector definitely sees the importance of what they do and the service that they're providing. Because with a commercial entity, typically you're helping the organization grow its revenue, reduce costs, or improve customer experience, but it's always on a commercial basis. Whereas when you deal with public sector, it is around governments, it's around taxpayers' monies, it's around delivering better services to the citizens. So I think there's always element of pride with everyone who deals with public sector, that they're there to make a difference, both from a vendor perspective and obviously the good people who work in public sector and the various departments. Okay,
good. No, that's I mean, putting citizens at the kind of center of all of this, right, is something in the this is the third one of these we're doing now, and obviously those themes start to come across, right? Citizens at the heart of everything that's being done, but also the scale and the challenges of some of these problems that government are trying to solve. I think one of the guests I spoke to recently talked about these problems were almost never solved. It's a case of just trying to make them a bit better, or trying to make things run more smoothly. And that in and of itself is a huge challenge.
And you're spot on, Lloyd. So, if we look at situation with COVID, we know there's a backlog in patient care, and appointments and getting to see the right person, and people have backlogged and said I'll do it later, or haven't even bothered. So there is an issue. So when you start then looking at technology and thinking, right, actually, how can we help accelerate that? These are problems which did exist a few years ago, but have been amplified because of COVID. And there's always something which is going to happen where public sector governments will have to adapt to the situation in hand. And I think what technology is enabling is that rapid realization of what the solution could look like and how we can make the situation better. And one of the other points, Lloyd, is that sometimes it's not around just one vendor providing the answer. It's about multiple vendors coming together to solve a problem. And I think as we grow maturer in the market space, there are some companies who are willing to embrace that. And ServiceNow is definitely one of those companies where it's about how do we work with tech partners, customers to deliver solutions which are the right thing for the public sector.
No, that's really interesting around this. We see it more and more about the kind of idea of a technology ecosystem, right? Certain and individual organizations understanding which niche role they play within this kind of ecosystem and how they can, best serve. And maybe it's not best to try and be all things to all people, and knowing how you fit into that and how you can work with organizations. So that's really interesting. That might lead me on actually nicely to my next question. And that was, I was going to ask you about your top 3 tips for helping public sector organizations overcome this kind of fear of changing from legacy systems or realizing the benefits of newer systems. So I think, can I take one of those to be that you'd recommend this kind of partnering approach and ecosystem approach as one of the things that you'd recommend in that?
Definitely, and I think that's critical for vendors as well, to have an open mind in working with others, because there's some really phenomenal technologies out there, and I think working in collaborative way to think, right, we could take a bit of your solution, a bit of ServiceNow and someone else and deliver that. Is one element. The other one is be very clear on what you're looking to achieve. So the clearer the organization can be, the better results the vendors and the partners can deliver. Sometimes you get organizations who can be guarded in what they're looking to achieve. Mm-hmm. And when that scenario happens, you can't put your best foot forward. You can't provide that thought leadership because you don't have all the information at hand. So I think definitely be clear about what you want to achieve. Let the partners, let the vendors be creative on what that vision looks like, and also be clear on the timescales. So not just from within your own department, but can these vendors deliver a solution in a month, 3 months, 12 months? So be very clear on what the outcome of that implementation is.
Brilliant. And you've kind of, it's interesting as well, Kam, because you've spoken about pace quite a lot on this in this chat so far, right? So talk about your own pace and kind of how do you speed up the whole process of deploying technology? And now you're talking about kind of partners and things like that. So is kind of speed of implementation or speed of support quite crucial to you when you're picking the sort of organizations that you want to work with them? Is that one of your kind of key measures?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, if I look back a few years ago, IT projects were long and slow, and you'd have to wait for servers to be spun up and space in the data center. And those obstacles now have been removed by just how IT or solutions are delivered. So the physical challenges around time have gone. So organizations, both vendors and customers, need to realize that actually things can be done at a lot quicker pace. And if that, back to the old analogy of kind of fail fast or deliver success quick, that has to be the driver, because the rate of change, because of the way the environment we're living in is, with the use of cloud and AI and machine learning, this means that solutions can be delivered at a very rapid pace. So what then shouldn't happen is organizations should have a number of obstacles in place which prevent that speed from being delivered. And when I talk about obstacles, you've got things like lengthy procurement cycles and RFPs, which I know are critical to public sector, but again, they're linked, because I always think the better quality of the RFP, the better quality of your vision, means that the vendors can respond in a more comprehensive way first time round.
And I had a bit, I was smiling a little bit there, just kind of looking back on my own experience from a procurement perspective, right? Because I think, especially with technology and the kind of, in the way it's advanced, I worked in regulated procurement previously, and knowing that if you build these processes wrong, if you try and make these RFP processes too complex, really you're slowing slowing the pace of what's possible. You almost want to let vendors in sooner and kind of let them get their hands on the solution faster, so they can try and fix these problems, or at least understand them better. And I can totally understand how those kind of processes can be quite frustrating if they're not set out in a sensible way.
And Lloyd, look, there's the technology buzzwords, agile and innovation and transformation, and we hear them all the time. I think what also is critical is understanding what those actually mean for your organization. So I'm working with vendors and working in collaboration and as a partnership to say, actually, we'll deliver something today, but in 3 months, 6 months, a year's time, we're going to review that, and we might need to course adjust it to the environment that we're in during the time.
Yep.
And I think that's another really important piece, that once a solution is in, or once something is provided, it doesn't mean that doesn't then need to be looked at for the next 2 years or 5 years beyond. Okay. I think that previously used to happen, where if we look in the software world, nothing would change until there was an upgrade. And that upgrade could be, if you look at big ERP systems, that could be a year or 2 years down the line, whereas now everything is kind of constantly moving and evolving.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think about that as well in terms of, like, draw a comparison to kind of construction projects. Things change along that timeline sometimes, and you have to you almost respec or readjust as you go along. And if you're too fixed contractually in terms of SLAs and these things as you go along, or your expectations, then you're setting yourself up to fail somehow if you're too rigid in that process. So it's interesting that you kind of call that out, of having to be kind of more fluid in that kind of in the life of the contract. So yeah, definitely, I think some really good insight there, Kam.
The other one, Lloyd, which is coming up quite a bit from the legacy aspect, is where, and again, this is a general comment, but where customers have decided to have bespoke coding or bespoke elements to their solution, which at the time may have felt like the right thing to do, because obviously every customer is unique and the service they provide. But actually, when you fast forward, that customization is the element which is holding them back from driving innovation or change, because the cost of revisiting that custom code, revisiting the customization, or the expense paid is going to prevent you from really accelerating. So my advice to everyone, if I could be as bold as giving any advice, is try and be off the shelf as much as possible. And it's a difficult concept, because especially in public sector, most organizations are quite unique in what they provide, but most solutions will provide 90+% of what you need from the box, out of the box. So really question whether you do need that customization, that specific coding, because that may prevent you from really being that agile, innovative customer in the future.
Got you. Okay, that's really great. Yeah, that's really great input. Actually, I never thought about it like that, but almost, yeah, tying yourself up in knots, trying to have all these bespoke elements that actually just kind of, you're going with the flow of what the technology can provide, and working with that. That's really, really, really insightful stuff. So, Kam, there's at least three. I mean, I asked you for three tips a little while ago. There's at least kind of three that jumped out. But using a kind of multiple vendors to help with the solution, be clear on outcomes is something that you talked about, and letting vendors be creative within that when you're using vendors. And then this idea of customization, because that works on both sides, right? From a bespoke point of view, if the customer or the buyer wants something too bespoke, it's kind of taking them to the journey of these could be the benefits of something which is more, which is less bespoke, which is more general, but actually you can build off a base of something which is quite, generic with your own kind of bespoke elements later. So that's, super useful. Kam, next up, I was going to ask you about something that I'd spoken to a colleague of yours prior to the call about, this idea of kind of hyper automated systems, which I think is something which is a kind of ServiceNow area of expertise. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of walk through an example of where we had kind of more of a legacy system in the public sector, and moving into something which is much more heavily automated. So kind of putting automation at the heart of this change, and kind of, is there an example you could talk me through of where you've done that from legacy to kind of hyper automated?
Yeah, there's a couple of areas without going specific into customers. I think HR and onboarding, and also customer engagement. So they're two areas where, with a number of organizations in public sector, we've helped completely automate that. So from a front end aspect of looking and feeling very similar. So whether you're working for Department A or Department B, the onboarding experience is completely the same, but completely automating the back office to making sure paperwork and equipment and all of the elements of someone starting a new organization is completely automated. So two elements happen there, Lloyd. One is the end employee has a great experience because you start on the right day with the right equipment, with the right benefits in place, but you reduce a load of costs because the manual process of someone physically ordering assets or physically ordering or reserving a desk or making sure payroll have the details is completely wiped out. The other one is from a customer experience perspective, is how do you absolutely give that 360 view of your customer to the organization, and again, without a manual intervention, automating this so the right information is provided to the right agent or the right department to act on that in a very quick and efficient way. And as a customer, you always think of you buying a product and you having an issue with that. But actually, if you look at the broader context of public sector, if a citizen has an issue with something a little bit more serious around their health or social services, you want that ability to have as little touch points in an automated way to get that information to the right department or people. And there are just a couple of examples where we've helped customers with the hyper automation, as you called it.
That's so interesting. I mean, look, from a perspective of a scale up, I mean, we would love to have things like that when we're trying to add staff quickly, and the amount of effort that it takes to actually just bring somebody in and have them just hit the ground running with all of their systems, processes, policies, all the things they need to understand being delivered. So yeah, that sounds like quite a powerful solution, to say the least. And the one about customers, I guess, for contracting authorities who want to understand citizens better and collect as much kind of feedback from them as well. Anything you can do at scale in an automated way is going to be massive, I'm sure.
No, and you think about, Lloyd, without going into deep and dark details, But think about the citizen and the various departments a situation could result in them interacting with, whether it's social services, police, healthcare. So the hyper automation piece really should eliminate the situation where there are silos and data doesn't get to the right department and things fall through the crack, and then you have a situation which is something we want to not hear about or in the press. So hyper automation just means that if it's connected, you have the ability to take that manual process out. Are we there yet? No. There's a lot of work we need to do to get there, but that's one of our primary drivers, is to focus on connecting various departments better together.
Great to hear about being on that journey as a citizen anyway, and look forward to kind of benefiting from all those things. Kam, just going to change gear a little bit as we move through. So if you could give one message to a public sector organisation, so let's flip this around now and talk to those contracting authorities or buyers who may be listening today. What message would you give them about the one thing that would help them quell any fear of moving away from a legacy system, embracing something more automated or a newer system to replace something that they've got already?
I think genuinely change is good. That was what I'd call out. I'd say vast majority of organizations have vested interest in delivering a good, viable solution to their customers. So embrace the intent from the vendors and the partners, but be transparent and work in partnership with them. Because as I mentioned earlier, the more information we have, the better insight we can get, the better solutions we can provide. But be very clear on what you're looking to achieve. Put the onus back onto the vendor to say, how will you deliver this from a ROI, TCO aspect, and make them accountable. Revisit the solution in 3 months, 6 months time. So it's not just when the virtual contract is signed, but constantly reevaluate that and make sure it's delivering what it intended to do.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that idea of sharing more upfront. And again, from my experience, I try to do that as much as possible, but I can see the value of doing that even more. Okay, Kam, that's fantastic. I was going to ask you for some final thoughts about today's discussion, if there's anything you'd like people to take away, but I think that actually wraps it up really nicely there of that message to kind of helping overcome those fears. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really useful chat. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everybody listening and watching will as well. So thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lloyd.
Okay, bye-bye.